Right now, we have a lot of gaming YouTubers gearing up for what I think we should refer to as the Engoodening of Cyberpunk, right? The narrative that Cyberpunk from CD Projekt Red is somehow going to be magically out of nowhere a good game. It looks like Susie Hunter, the Sphere Hunter, is leading the charge with like all this propaganda about how the game has been completely rebuilt, how it's completely different. The upgrade system has changed. They've changed the models. They changed the animation. They fixed all the glitches. Just buy the expansion. Like just invested all this money in this game that already is not very good. Like just buy into it, and not a lot of people are calling it out at this point, right? It feels like most YouTubers are going along with it. Like I'm sure Angry Joe is going to go along with it as well. I think most people are going to try and paint this narrative that the game is good now, like a lot like they did with No Man's Sky, right? Like exactly like they did with No Man's Sky. But I feel like Cyberpunk is so notoriously awful, is so like unpopular with its audience, and has like disappointed so many people that it's going to be like impossible to do. Like I really do think we're going to see firsthand that gaming YouTubers, influencers, and like gaming journalists really don't have the reach that gaming companies think they do. Like if you pay Angry Joe $1 million to show your product, you're not getting that money back. You're not getting $1 million in profit from his fans like rushing out to play the game. Like his fans probably don't even watch his videos, right? They're there for the reviews, and they're there for like maybe Marvel movie coverage. Like that's it, right? They don't care about the sponsorships. They don't care about like, like his opinions on like upcoming games, or whether or not like Cyberpunk 2077 is good now. That's not his demographic. That's not his audience. Like he is not going to be able to manipulate anyone ever, right? Like he is a pleb. Like he has no real influence. And I think the same thing can be said for Susie Hunter. I think we are legit going to see like the Sphere Hunter like hit a brick wall when it comes to this situation, specifically trying to convince us that Cyberpunk 2077 is good now. Like I think it's legit can't be done. Like I think the window for fixing that has long passed, like 3 years ago. The game is 3 years old, and it's only now getting an expansion. Like I think CD Projekt Red is like a failing company that's desperate to do anything to salvage their reputation. And I think like latching on to people like the Sphere Hunter, using Studio Trigger to make an anime, and that which existence supposedly like saved the game. Like they're doing everything they possibly can, but like unlike No Man's Sky, which I think a lot of people bought into it, like I think a lot more people are critical of what CD Projekt Red is doing. Like I think there's a lot more skepticism. I think a lot of people saw through it a lot more quickly because I was I saw the shills doing their thing on 4chan, like, oh, look at me, like the hype for Cyberpunk 2077 is so organic, guys. Like it was like obviously fake. It was obviously like astroturf. It was always obviously trying to push a narrative. They hired like the cheapest shills they could possibly get. It was unbelievable. And I think nobody was actually influenced, because I've seen like a handful of times where like they've tried hiring shill campaigns, like they tried salvaging like The Last of Us Part 2 during like when The Last of Us HBO was still airing. They've tried doing this a couple of times, but it's really not all that effective. Like it really comes off as if like you have like a very short barrier of entry to like establish your game as a classic, among the minds of like your demographic. And if like it misses that window, like there's nothing you can do, right? Like like it doesn't matter, because like the reception of the game has been like set in stone. Like nobody's going to go back and play your game like years later and say like, oh, this was an obscure masterpiece, because the game wasn't that good. Like these modern AAA games are entirely reliant on hype and like tricking you into buying an unfinished product in order to get you to like give you your $60. Oh, I'm sorry, your $70 now. Like CD Projekt Red is not able to put out another game. Like, so they're trying to do this thing where they're trying to sell you Cyberpunk 2077 by claiming the game is fixed and that they're going to put out an expansion that fixes all the problems, right? And I just don't think that's going to fly. Like, I really think the best thing for them to do was just, like, bite the bullet and just release another game, right? And, like, try and build back their reputation. But it's just not going to work. Like, they spent so much time and money hyping up Cyberpunk 2077. Like, I remember them, like, talking about this since, like, 2013. or something like that. 2015 maybe at the absolute earliest. Like I remember them like hyping this up as going to be like this big phenomenal thing, right? Like I remember them like this is going to change the industry. You're going to have to like upgrade your PC for this. Like it's not going to be able to run on consoles. Like it's going to be so advanced. And that just didn't happen, right? And the game was complete trash and nobody wants to admit it, right? Every narrative they tried throwing at this thing just failed to stick. Like, I remember when they said that, like, oh, the game runs fine on PC, which isn't true. Like, the game will be fixed with patches, which isn't true. The game will be fixed with an expansion, which, they're trying to push now, but is also not really getting any traction, right? It's just not going to happen. And I really think that any YouTuber that goes along with this, I'm sure, like, Susie Hunter, the Spear Hunter, who I think is Yongye tiers of like industry like dick sucking at this point. Like people like that are going to try and sell you on this idea that the game is great, like that they've been patched into being good. And more I do think gamers need to reject the notion, right? Like if the developers were so passionate, if they're so talented, if they're gonna put out a good game, like put it out when it's finished. Like, don't do this thing when they release it when it's broken and it doesn't have anything going for it. Like, release a completely 100% finished game and then we'll talk. Until then, go away.